Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Owen Russell. We start out with our Super Sports segment with these much anticipated results of the Rugby World Cup against South Africa and New Zealand. In a final score of 12-11, South Africa came out victorious, becoming the first nation to ever win 4 World Cup championships. Because of penalties, the New Zealand All Blacks played the game short-handed. However, it was a close match, with one South Africa Springbok player saying, quote, "Credit to my boys too for the fight. I'm just grateful we could pull it off." The match for bronze in the World Cup between England and Argentina resulted in an English victory with a final score of 26-23. Turning our attention to another international competition, an announcement on October 31st revealed Saudi Arabia is set to host the 2034 Men's FIFA World Cup after Australia withdrew its bid to host the tournament hours before the deadline closed. Saudi Arabia has been accused of sports washing, however, which is the practice of using sports to redirect public attention away from unethical conduct. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman said, quote, "I don't care," in regards to the spending practices of the country being labeled sports washing, amidst controversial rules under Sharia law, including laws that are anti-LGBTQ, making it a crime punishable by death to have same-sex relations. The Sports and Rights Alliance, a global coalition of human rights organizations, urged FIFA to secure human rights protections for the 2030 and 2034 World Cup tournaments, saying, quote, "Human rights commitments must be agreed with potential hosts before final decisions on holding the tournaments are made," end quote. It should also be noted that this was most recently an issue when the 2022 World Cup was held in Qatar, another country under Sharia law forbidding same-sex relations, and once again reopens the question of whether these countries should be allowed to host international competitions if basic human rights are not met. The women's national soccer team has been playing a series of friendly matches between Colombia, with the most recent game, too, resulting in a 3-0 win for the United States. Goals for the United States were made in the 56th minute by Mia Fischel, the 62nd minute by Lindsey Horan, and in the 83rd minute by Jaden Shaw. Shaw's goal was especially memorable as it marked the first goal of her career, and because it was assisted by Alyssa Thompson, it marked the first assist for Thompson as well. These series of friendlies against Colombia are the first set of international games after soccer legend Megan Rapinoe hung up her cleats mid-October. Megan Rapinoe is known for her bright hair colors, LGBTQ advocacy, and impressive career, including 2 Olympic medals, 2 FIFA World Cup titles, a Golden Ball and Golden Boot, and ranking in the top 10 of U.S. women's national team history in both goals and assists. It will be exciting to see the U.S. women's national team develop some of those newer talents as more seasoned players are looking to retire from the competitive sport in the near future. NASCAR is down to the final 4 drivers competing for the 2023 Cup Series title. Ryan Blaney, Christopher Bell, Kyle Larson, and William Byron will be competing on the race taking place Sunday, November 5th at 3 p.m. Kyle Larson is racing to wear the crown again, as he previously won it in 2021, and out of the final 4, he is the only one who has won it before. In the Zone will bring the much anticipated race results to viewers next week. Now let's jump into some conversation. With the NBA season starting, the World Series matchup heating up, and lots of football headliners, we've got a lot to talk about. So let's get into it. In the Zone starts now. I'm now joined by Jarrett Meisner and Bill Cullen to discuss the start of the NBA season. Now obviously we're really early on into this thing, but through the first week the Nuggets are looking like they haven't lost a step. The Celtics look incredible with their new starting 5, and obviously we can't forget the Bucks and the Suns. Jarrett, what are your early season predictions for who's going to be in the finals come June?
Man, I love the Nuggets. They look good. Actually, they look great to start the season. They look like it's June again, you know. And coming from the East, I got Boston. Their starting 5 is ridiculous with Porzingis and Drew Holiday now. Really like what they got going on. I think Denver's really well coached, and you know that unmatched chemistry that they got going on with Murray and Jokic and Porter and Gordon.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Hard to stop. And then coming out of Boston, I really like Drew Holiday. You know, he can take a back seat and just play some defense. Derek White, I think he's like a 5-tool weapon. Pretty much like the Taysom Hill of the NBA, honestly.
I like it. Honestly, though, Derek White's emergence has been a big thing for the Celtics.
The other night, he had 30-something points, like 36 points.
Who would have ever expected that? Bill, would you?
Well, for me in the East, to me, the East and the West, it's easier to pick out of the East, in my opinion, than it is out of the West, because literally you can pick 8 teams. It's just so loaded. But to me in the East, I'm going to lean to Milwaukee. I think they have the best 1-2 punch in the NBA right now with Dame and Giannis. They won the title just, 3 years ago, and the last 2 years they lost pretty early. Last year was embarrassing what happened, but both years they were injured, right? I mean, Middleton hasn't been healthy. Giannis got hurt last year. I think if this team healthy, they can run through anybody. I think they're deep, and my only question is the coach, but I think that they are going to be able to figure it out and be able to win big games.
Absolutely.
My team in the West, I bounced around. I looked at it and I said, I looked at it. After the Golden State Super Team, the team to win the title the next year not only has it made the finals, has it made the conference finals. So I don't think Denver's going to get back there. I think they kind of I'm not saying they got lucky in the playoffs. They were great, but it just felt like they played way above to what they really are. And I think that this Lakers team, they played really bad to start the year last year. They got better as the year went on because they found their identity. I really love their bench pieces. With Christian Wood, they got out from Dallas. They got Gabe Vincent from Miami. And, of course, Hachimura. And Cam Reddish is a good player.
Hachimura is insane. In the playoffs last year, he went off.
Exactly. And, I mean, we all think about LeBron and AD, but Austin Reeves can hit big shots. D'Lo is inconsistent, but when it comes down to it, he can put up decent points.
Absolutely.
And last year, again, even though they got swept to Denver, it was all games were very close.
I just got to say, I agree with your take in the Western Conference. In the East, personally, they haven't had a good start to the season, but Miami, you have to give them some credit. Bam Adebayo's been playing insane. And also, I think Philadelphia has to get some credit, especially after what just happened. I mean, with the news breaking around 3 in the morning on Tuesday, we can finally end those James Harden trade rumors, guys. That's right. James Harden finally got his wish and is joining the trio out in LA of Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Russell Westbrook, who are trying to get themselves into title contention in a big way. The deal has Philly sending James Harden and PJ Tucker to LA, while the Clippers are sending Robert Covington, Marcus Morris, Nick Batum, and KJ Martin, as well as 2 first and 2 second-round picks. Bill, what do you think of this? Who won the trade?
Well, the Sixers won the trade because they got rid of the guy who wasn't going to play for them this year. And the way that I look at it is they just got all those draft picks, all those players for essentially PJ Tucker. To me, that's how I look at it. Because, again, they weren't playing Harden this year. Here's the way to look at it. Next year, the Sixers, going into next year, have the second most cap space in the NBA. They are going to have a load of draft picks, and they now have a bunch of either really good rotation of guys who will stay on the team this year, or they're going to have guys they're going to trade to get a better starter.
Oh, yeah.
That's bar none what they're going to have this year. To me, the Clippers, with this trade, they had a good deep team, and I actually did like the Clippers for the most part, but to me, now they're top-heavy now. And here's my thing. At the end of the day, they have their 4 best players. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, you can't depend on their health. James Harden, you can't depend on his health. And trust me, you can't depend on him in the playoffs in the biggest spots. And Russell Westbrook, you can't depend on him on the biggest spots, and he's not the player that he was with the Thunder.
I'd be willing to argue, honestly, that Russell Westbrook's not going to be relied on, though, on the team. Not as much as he would be in other situations.
If I take away the 3, PG, Kawhi, who all 3 of them, there's a good chance they're going to get hurt. Who's the best player on that team?
Good point.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
Right now, it's Terrence Mann.
Terrence Mann? Is it Norman Powell?
Avika Zubac, Bones Island.
Yeah,
It's not.
It's rough.
It's not that great. And at the end of the day, for the Sixers, they relied on James Harden, especially on offense. They kind of leaned on him way too much last year by the end, and that's what kind of hurt Embiid in the playoffs, especially when he was injured. This year, what they've done, even though it's 3 games, what they've done a very good job is playing a 2-man game and having a bunch of other guys play around the 3-point line. Their spacing has been unbelievable this year. Maxey and Embiid kind of give you that feel of kind of what Jamal Murray and Jokic have been giving you over the last few years.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And if they could stay, if Embiid, please stay healthy for once, this team can go.
You're asking
but
a lot.
my issue is I do think they need at least one more guy, especially, I know PJ Tucker don't put up a lot of points, but he was their driving force defensively. He was their guy that they asked for when it came to hustle plays. And so I do think they're going to probably make one more move before the deadline.
Agreed, Jarrett. Anything to add?
No, I'm going to say I think LA won the deal because now the team isn't good besides the top. It's top heavy, like Billy said. But what they got coming off the bench is Bones Highland and Norman Powell, who are proven scorers, and Terrence Mann, who's like a 3-and-D guy.
Love Terrence Mann.
And with the addition of PJ Tucker, their bench has potential to not just falter off like you'll see with like Boston this year. Boston has a real weak bench. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, this is a sign of faith in Tyrese Maxey at the end of the day, because you're getting rid of his main competition, if you can say competition. I think they want him to be a leader on the team, and I think they want him to step up this season. I think he will too. He's looked good so far.
There's a lot of concern with the Sixers that Tyrese Maxey can't play the one, because especially when Harden came in, he kind of played that two role.
Right.
Wasn't a ball controller, but he's shown that even when the whole Ben Simmons drama was happening, and so far this year, that he can absolutely play the one. And he is right now one of the better guards in the NBA that nobody's talking about.
My God, absolutely. Well, we now send it over to Aaron Chun for the latest in Marauder athletics. Aaron?
Thanks, Owen. This past week has been filled with ups and downs for the Marauders. In football, despite a late rally, the Marauders fell to Kutztown University by a score of 17-12. The team will battle Bloomsburg University this upcoming Saturday. In soccer, the men picked up a pair of wins against Westchester on Wednesday, 3-0, and versus Bloomsburg this past Saturday, 1-0. Women's soccer had a rougher time, losing 1-0 to Shippensburg on Wednesday and 5-2 against Westchester on Tuesday. In field hockey, we took a pair of tough losses, falling 2-0 versus Westchester Wednesday and 3-2 against Mansfield in a shootout on Saturday. Volleyball picked up a win, 3-2 against Shepherd on Friday, but lost 3-1 in their Saturday match against Shippensburg. Looking ahead, it's a busy week for Ville sports with the men's-women's soccer doubleheader on Friday against Shepherd and Lock Haven, respectively. On Saturday, the aforementioned football game against Bloomsburg, and the swim team will take on Kutztown here at home. Volleyball will hit the road Friday and Saturday, taking on East Stroudsburg and Kutztown, respectively. Looking further ahead, on November 6th, the PSAC quarterfinals begin for men's soccer, and the basketball season will officially kick off, led by the girls' team on November 10th against Virginia Union, and then the men on the 11th against Livingstone here on our home court. Now we'll send it back to the desk for some more MLB World Series conversation, and I wish we were talking about the Phillies right now. Owen, back to you.
Thanks, Aaron. We're now joined by Dylan Shields to talk about the MLB World Series matchup. So far, the series has gotten off to a hot start. And this is an interesting matchup, to say the least, but it's been hard to stop this year's bandwagon team, the Texas Rangers. They're fighting for their first World Series title in franchise history, and so far it's looking pretty good for them. Can they finally pull it off, Bill? And if so, how long do you think they can dominate in the league?
Well, first off, going into the series, I thought they would win in 6. I thought the Diamondbacks would be able to hang in there with them, which they honestly, outside of this last game, they've really, every game has been either them or it's been pretty close. They remember Texas won on a walk-off in Game 1. Game 2 was a very low-scoring 3-1 game. But the issue is Texas on the road is 10-0. Gallen in these playoffs honestly, since the start of the NLCS, has been very bad. He's been 0-3 in his starts. And he's starting tonight, and they need him to play great for them to get that series back to Texas. But if we want to talk about past this series, which I do think that the Rangers should win tonight. If not, they will win in Game 6. But the Rangers, they will be good for a while because not only do they have great veterans like Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Adolis Garcia, and Mitch Garver's been outstanding DHing for them. But their young bats, Evan Carter getting brought up this year, has been nothing short of amazing. Josh Young has been hitting 8 for them and has been hitting home runs almost every single game. Jeez. And then, of course, Jonah Heim playing catcher. The switch hitter has been also outstanding for them from the start of this year. Their starting pitching, to me, is one of the best in baseball. I don't know if they'll keep all the guys with DeGrom still getting paid. Scherzer, I think, is a free agent this year. They also have to pay Jordan Montgomery this offseason, Nate Eovaldi. They got some high prices up in the starting rotation, but when they are together, and if they keep those 4, that's definitely the best starting rotation in baseball. So I do think that if they will win, I do believe that they will win this series. But I also don't want to say that the Diamondbacks should be completely. We have to keep in mind that we saw what happened in the Phillies series. They just found a way to keep it going, and then when it went back to Philadelphia, it looked like the Phillies just flat out quit.
Do you think the news that Garcia is out for the rest of the series is going to impact anything? Or
Well,
was Garcia?
that happened after Game 3, and the Rangers put up 11 runs. So I don't know if it's definitely going to affect him in the sense of he is one of the best bats on that team. He won the MVP of the ALCS, but that offense is so good that they find a way to figure it out every time.
I mean, they did this without Garcia and Scherzer getting hurt, too, was very impressive. And I also think, too, for the series, their bullpen for the Rangers has just been better than the Diamondbacks. I mean, they had, in last night's game, 2 chances in the second, third inning with 2 outs to get out of that inning, and they blew it. They gave up 5 runs in each innings, and that just completely changed the momentum of that game. And Diamondbacks could keep it close, but I think it's going to be too much to overcome the Rangers in this series.
I gotcha. I'm going to be the devil's advocate here. I'm going to be the odd man out, the black sheep. I'm going to say the Diamondbacks make it a comeback. I like them. I really like this Diamondbacks team. 22 years ago when I was a kid, they won the World Series over the Yankees. It was I really want to see them do it. Zach Allen also is one of my favorite pitchers in the league. So, yeah, don't call it a comeback. Well, new college football playoff rankings are out, and a very interesting development has been made. Ohio State is surprisingly ranked first after weeks of sitting well behind Georgia and Michigan. This comes after a lukewarm performance against an unranked Wisconsin squad, who most thought would get absolutely crushed by the Buckeyes. Do these rankings come as a surprise to you, Dylan? And if so, what would you change?
Well, they definitely come across as a surprise to me.
God, yeah.
And for mine, I would have, as a hot take as this is, I'd have Michigan as my #1 team. I know they got the cheating scandal, but to me that has nothing to do with the players. That's more coaching. And the deadly duo, they have McCarthy as their QB, one of the best in the country, and he's a Heisman candidate. And Cornum, too, with 13 touchdowns already. He's probably the best running back in the Big Ten. And yes, Michigan's had an easy schedule. Ohio State's had a little bit tougher matchups with Notre Dame and Penn State. But Michigan, I don't think they've had a game where it's been like a 2-possession game or even 1-possession win. It's all been blowouts. They blew the doors off Indiana, who Penn State this weekend almost lost to, and Ohio State was struggling against. Yeah. Georgia lost their best receiver in Bowers. They've still looked pretty decent, but who knows with them going forward. And Ohio State, I just don't like their offense as much. McCord's good, but not great. Henderson's a good running back, but not great. It seems like their offense runs around Harrison Jr. And yeah, just to me overall, Michigan is my #1, and I just don't think Ohio State or Georgia could beat them right now if they play them.
I have to agree with that. Bill?
Well, I would agree with one thing that I think Ohio State shouldn't be one, but I would say Georgia to me has to be one, just in the sense of what they've done over the last 2 years. They have a pedigree. They've won the national championship the last 2 years. Ohio State to me, what have they done this year? To me, nothing. What they've done has meant nothing. They beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame to me is not that good. They beat Penn State. Penn State every year finds a way to mess it up. That is just what they do.
Yep.
And what have they done to prove? Because what they've done over the last 3 years, including this year, what is their biggest accomplishment? Almost beating Georgia? Seriously.
Yeah,
They haven't won a Big Ten. They lost to Michigan twice. They have made the playoff only one time, and they almost beat Georgia. That's their only accomplishment since 2021. To me, outside of that, I do believe that the biggest surprise, how is Washington not in the top 4?
Yeah.
Yes.
How is
I
Florida
agree.
State over them? To me, I like, what if, again, Washington to me has one of, if not the most impressive win in college football this year.
Penix Jr. too is incredible.
They have the best offense to me. I do believe they're the best offense in the
No,
country.
I do have to say Florida State, I think, has earned its spot at #4. They are
Over Washington.
They are over Washington. Yeah, I think they're a very solid team. This is the resurgence of the Seminoles. This is something that we haven't seen in a while, but they look incredible. I've seen them play a few times this year, and don't get me wrong, Penix is great. Washington's great. I don't know though.
Travis is excellent, to be fair.
Yes.
Here's my thing with them. Even though Washington has played, every game has been pretty close and competitive, but at the end of the day, they just find a way, their offense is just too much. Florida State, every game, it's offense does this, defense does that. What has Florida State done to prove to you that they should be in the top 4? They beat LSU, who is one of the most overrated teams coming into college football this year.
Yes, I can't even.
Their
argue
other
that.
big-time win that I can think of is against Clemson, who is 4-4. They haven't done anything.
The Dabo Sweeney era needs to be over in Clemson, if we're being honest.
That's an argument for another day. But that
Yes,
to me, I just don't understand how a team who beat Oregon, by the way, Oregon, one of the most complete teams in the nation, and they went out there and they put up what 40 on that defense.
Yes.
Michael Penix right now should be in the Heisman candidate. If not, he is
should
the
be the
Heisman right
Heisman
now,
candidate.
and they have the best number 1 and number 2 receiver right now in college football.
I will just end this college football discussion by saying Ohio State's offense, I do agree, is not up to snuff this year. I think Kyle McCord might be the worst quarterback they've had in a while. And that's saying something. Like, Ohio State quarterbacks usually are good. I mean, you see that.
No, it's
Yeah.
definitely fair.
It should be interesting to see how it all shakes out. Yeah. But switching over to the NFL, the trade deadline is now behind us, and the results were certainly more underwhelming than most of us had hoped. That isn't to say, however, that nothing happened. Players like Chase Young, Leonard Williams, Kevin Byard, and many other names have found new homes on other teams around the league and are looking to elevate their game from here on out. There's certainly a lot to digest after these trades, but which one immediately stands out to you, Bill?
Well, Kevin Byard
Yeah.
is immediate. He was the biggest need out of all the teams. The Eagles' secondary this year has been very underwhelming. I mean, Sam Howell in back-to-back games this year has killed the Eagles' defense. Kirk Cousins threw for almost 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. They've been bad in the back end, and they needed to get a guy who's a top-5 safety in the league and who could play not only center field as a deep safety and not force big plays, but could play the slot when when teams like the Cowboys, like CeeDee Lamb plays in the slot, or like some of these top receivers who like to go over the middle and have the majority of the field to play with. He could play one-on-one over there in the slot with Kevin Byard. That's how good he is. He is unbelievable in coverage, and he can make tackles. To me, I know a lot of people might say Chase Young going to the Niners because they essentially got him for nothing. They got him for nothing because it's a compensatory pick who, if Chase Young leaves the Niners this year, which he probably will because some team's going to pay him, they're going to get that third-round pick back. So they traded him for nothing, essentially. Yeah. And they're going to pair him up with Nick Bosa like they did in college. But my thing is they already have a stacked defensive line. We know how good that defensive line is. Mm-hmm. So all they did was just make their richest thing, their best position that they have on the field is their D-line, and all they did was just make it a little bit better. The Eagles, they made their worst position into a need where it's like, okay, maybe that's not too big of a glaring hole anymore.
Good point.
I mean, I will say with the Chase Young move, I think the reason why the Niners made that move is, I mean, obviously they've struggled. They've lost 3 in a row. But besides week 1 against the Steelers, Bosa's been pretty much the only guy on pass rush getting consistent sacks for them. They kind of needed a guy like Chase Young. Yes, his pedigree's kind of fallen a little bit since being the number 2 pick, but it is a good asset for the Niners to have if they want to rebound from this 3-game losing streak. Another move I kind of low-key like is the Donovan Peoples-Jones to the Lions move. He hasn't been setting the world on fire, but they need depth. Jamison Williams, I mean, coming off suspension, hasn't been the best receiver yet. It's probably going to take him some more time to develop. So the more depth at receiver, because Amon St. Brown's clearly number 1 receiver, and it feels like Laporta's their number 2 as a tight end. He's had a breakout year. So the more depth for the Lions, especially after that Ravens blowout, they bounced back Monday against the Raiders. The more depth at receiver, the better. I think Peoples-Jones is underrated, and I think that's an underrated move that not a lot of people are talking about.
Same here. Peoples-Jones is also a kick returner, too. Mm-hmm. And that's something that the Lions have been needing this year. Absolutely, and forever, yeah. My personal underrated move, Montez Sweat to the Bears. That is a great pickup for Chicago. And I know they're not ready to compete right now, but I really do like that move.
I don't think the Bears needed to give up a second-round pick to get him.
Yeah,
that's essentially a first-round pick, too, because the Bears stink. Yeah. Think about it. That's going to be a high second-round pick. To me, I get it. That's a great pass rusher, and that I do think the Bears as a roster are not as badly built as people think they are.
I think really coaching is the issue there.
I agree. Absolutely. But let's also not forget last year the team traded away Roquan Smith for the very first pick of the second round, and then traded said pick traded that pick to the Steelers to get Chase Claypool. So this team not greatly known for their trades.
Thank you, Bears.
Exactly. But at the end of the day, to me, I think that I don't get me wrong. I want to say Chase Young's still a great player. Yes. One of the best edge rushers in the league when healthy. But to me, it's like how do I explain this? If the Eagles made a trade for a receiver, to me, it's like, well, they already have great receivers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They didn't get much better. The Eagles needed a safety. Like that was by far their biggest need, maybe a linebacker. Other than that, there's not many other holes. The Niners, to me, their O-line's a little bit weaker than people think. I think that their secondary is weaker than people think. And I think that that's going to hurt them down the line. If you want to talk about underrated trades, though, the Jags getting Ezra Cleveland from Minnesota
That's
is
a good
big
one.
time.
Yes.
Only giving up 1 sack and 250 snaps this year.
Absolutely.
Crazy.
So he's been unbelievable.
It should be interesting to see how everyone settles into their new homes. Yeah. But while many games in Week 8 had crucial outcomes, none stood out more than the Chiefs-Broncos game, where the Broncos defeated Patrick Mahomes for the first time in his entire career. And now, while Denver hasn't been a team to watch for quite a while now, this win has to feel pretty encouraging for them. On the flip side, the Chiefs haven't looked nearly as dominant this year as they have in previous years, making this game less of a fluke and more of a possible concern. What's your take, Dylan? Did the game say more about the Broncos' upside or the Chiefs' struggles?
To me, it's more the Broncos' upside because I know the Chiefs are struggling a little bit, but they always seem to find ways, despite their lack of depth at receiver, to find ways to win. Mahomes was sick too. That's not really an excuse, but still, Denver, yes, they're not a great team, but they lost, 15 in a row to them? It's a feel-good win for them to have. Russ kind of cooked low-key for 3 touchdowns. Their defense seems like they're getting back to last year's form led by Patrick Surtain. So, yeah, the Chiefs always have these weird losses. They lost to Indy last year, and look how they turned out. So they'll be fine. Last year they won the Super Bowl with a terrible receiving core besides Kelsey. So I think this does show more about the Broncos. Not amazing upside, but they do have some upside coming off this win. And this should make the locker room feel good, too. Chiefs, they'll bounce back. They got 15-87 on the field.
Agreed. Bill?
I completely agree because to me, I'm going to go with Kansas City to start. They outgained Denver in the game, yards. It wasn't like Denver was moving up and down the field. By the way, I want to say this Chiefs defense is unbelievable. If you watch that game, they got 6 sacks. They forced turnovers. They are good on defense. But the Chiefs offense had 5 turnovers. You're not winning a game. You're just not. But my concern is, and I said this before a couple weeks ago when I was on, I felt the Chiefs were the best team in the league because of the fact that their biggest concern was their passing game, and they have the best quarterback in the NFL. And the fact that their offense is still yet to be better, I do have a concern just in the sense of the rest of their schedule, they have to play Miami, Philadelphia, Buffalo, Cincinnati, and they also have the Chargers
True.
at the end of the year. That offense has to figure it out by the end, or they're going to have a couple more sprinkled losses in there, and they might not get that top seed like they've. Let's also keep in mind their dominance. The last 5 years, they've had the AFC Championship game at home. But going to Denver, they've been playing with an identity. They've won their last 2 games because we're gonna run the ball, we're gonna set up play action, we're gonna let Russ run around a little bit, and our defense go play better. Their defense over the last 3 games has given up 19, 17, and 9 after about a month ago giving up 70. So they clearly got that fixed. They had a lot of tougher games earlier in the year, like with Miami. They've already got the 2 Chiefs games out of the way. Denver, I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs. I'm not saying that they're going to be this big, bad team. But I'm saying that by the end of the year, if they just keep continuing this, maybe they'll consider, because remember, a couple weeks ago we were saying, do they keep Russ? Is Sean Payton gone? But now it's like maybe we'll get a
He's
part 2
looking
of this.
much better than last year, Russ.
Very much better
Oh my God,
than
Russ
last year.
has looked amazing this year. The bright spot on that team. But I do want to say I disagree with you guys. I think this is more of the Chiefs not performing as well. Because if you keep in mind, the Broncos, even though their defense has been performing a little bit better, they're still ranked consistently near the bottom of the barrel in terms of defenses. Their defense is not good this year. It's not good. And the fact that Kansas City, who's supposed to have the best quarterback in the league, arguably, the best tight end in the league, to drop 9 points against them, it's not going to get better. I think the Chiefs need to improve that offense. And unfortunately for Denver, there's just a lot of problems that I don't think are going to get solved anyway. It's a fluke win for Denver, bad loss for the Chiefs, in my opinion. It's just, yeah.
And the Chiefs did struggle the first game that they even beat Denver. I think they only had like 16 or 19 points. So that's a good point you made there.
Yeah, I feel like, yeah. Well, that'll do it for this episode of In the Zone. For Dylan Shields, Bill Cullen, Aaron Chun, Jarrett Meisner, and the entire crew of In the Zone, I'm Owen Russell. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week right here on In the Zone.